Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside Podcast. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by my good friend Vic Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the fireside and listen. Oh, back at it. Episode 30, pushing the big 3-0 mark. And my good friend, my dear friend, is back from his trip. Back from India, so you'll get the better half of the fireside. But Vic's been on holiday and he's back, and we're going to be chatting about some of the recent changes in the game, the FAQ that came out, and then we're going to be chatting about the kind of early meta developments, maybe the early signs, and then I think we're also going to chat about the London Open, which is just a small 50-player tournament in London that we've got, and me and a couple of teammates are going to. So yeah, but before I pass it over to Vic, I'm just going to give a big, I don't know if, that's my non-golf clap to Games Workshop, because I think if anything is prevalent, it's that evidence, it's that the community has spoken, and GW have addressed some of the issues, not all of them, but some of the issues to really address the balance issues in the game. So congratulations to Games Workshop. It's really good to see that they're super proactive, which is awesome. And I believe there was recently a job posted for Games Workshop to be the competitive game balance designer, something rather like that, and it had quite stringent requirements. You had to be a regular tournament winner, which is quite difficult.
Yeah, it's a very interesting job specification, to be honest.
Yeah. So I know a couple of episodes back we gave Games Workshop a lot of flack. Well, me in particular gave them a lot of flack, but I want to give a personal shout out to whoever, and I suspect it may or may not have been Mike Brandt, who was responsible for pushing the hiring of that role, the competitive game balance role, through GW Corporate, because I work in a big company, and pushing and persuading people to invest that is something that's worth investing in couldn't have been easy. And I think that perhaps that's a result of the community speaking up. But regardless of how it happened or who made it happen, thank you, because that's awesome. And congratulations to whoever gets the role. I'm sure they'll have a good impact and a star-studded credential lineup as well.
It's going to be very interesting to see how that actually progresses, but I do like it. Keeping the pulse on competitive events directly is probably the quickest way you can find significant areas of imbalance. I mean, it's not to say that imbalance doesn't affect the casual community as well, because it does, but it usually filters through after a period of time. Whereas competitively, it can be within weeks that people, sometimes within days, that people find the most imbalanced things and kind of take it to a level that you might miss in playtesting. So I'm glad to see that they've kind of identified this as a potential area that they could improve on.
Yeah, exactly, and it only bodes well for the future. So, without further ado, let's jump into the FAQ. Do you want to kick us off? You've been absent for a couple of episodes, so
yeah. So the FAQ, there was only one direct errata change, as far as I could see, which a direct kind of rule change, which was a change to Fate dice for Eldari. It's quite interesting that they only went for this one, because the video mentioned they were going to attack a few different things here. They were going to go for towering, indirect fire, and Eldari generally. They chose to manage Eldari primarily with a rule change, and this change to Strands of Fate, which is their faction rule, is that you can only use one of these Strands of Fate dice per phase.
Yep.
So we came up, some potential solutions, which we were chatting about. Maybe, you can only use one per unit per phase.
Yeah.
But they've gone a little bit more aggressive than that. They've just made it one per phase.
Quite aggressive, isn't it? Because one per unit per phase, you could dump maybe 6 in a battle round or something. Or more than that, maybe. maybe 7 or 8 in a battle round, assuming you're taking saves. But once per phase is really quite... that's quite a bit further than I thought they were going to do it, actually.
It's a significant nerf. And actually, playing with the Eldari, I feel like it's in the right place with that particular rule. Now, you might remember a couple of episodes back, we were kind of looking at the faction preview of Eldari. And the point which was highlighted was that there's layers of problems here, and the layers only got worse with time as we got more of the rules. And now one of the layers is removed, and that layer is this Fate dice mechanic being too overly powerful and being extremely front-loaded, particularly defensively.
I think I know where you're going to go with this one,
Yeah.
because they still have a very, very strong mechanic, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple layers now. Now you've got a too strong a reroll mechanic built in
That's
for
yeah.
reroll to hit and wound. The units are generally undercosted across the board.
Hmm.
The movement manipulation is extremely high, and
Yeah, that's true. Hmm.
it's going to take a lot of levels of nerfs to bring Eldar into balance.
Yep.
I think, and
Could
this
be.
is the first step of that.
Yeah, so I think you raise a really good point here, actually, which is that this is quite a big nerf to Fate Dice, but there's still super egregious things in the game. Phantasm for 1 CP is still the best stratagem perhaps ever printed, I think, right? It's definitely up there with the most bonkers stuff ever. 4-up auto wound for 1 CP was really good. Overrun was really good, but I mean it's not anywhere near on the level of like Phantasm is incredible. So yeah, you raise, and then they didn't change Master Artisans as well. So that's definitely interesting. There's definitely a couple more things they could maybe hit on the head. Like Master Artisans would be an easy one. Just make it a hit or wound roll, right? And it's still really powerful.
Yeah,
It's still better than what 90% of the faction bonuses out there.
Yeah, well, it would just, I mean, they are going to touch things over time, I think, here. The What I did find interesting was that they did do some points changes to Eldar as well. We're kind of hitting Eldar first here, which is
Mm-hmm.
like right at the top of the meta. They increased Wraith Knights by 105 points. So that's a big points increase for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the Wraith Knight points change highlights one of the issues with the way that they've done war gear for units,
Yeah.
because there's been no change to devastating wounds across the game here.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yep.
wasn't one of the issues that they were correcting, and devastating wounds still exists on kind of some of the Eldar units. The Wraith Knight has a 2d6 damage devastating wound gun, and you can take 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that is so much more powerful than every other option.
Yeah, exactly.
To correctly point for that particular loadout, you need to go higher than what they've done.
Really? You need to go higher. Oh,
I think so. I think
spice.
either you change the weapon or you have to increase the points further than what they've already done. Or
Yeah.
you make a significant change to the towering rule, another thing which hasn't changed.
Mm.
So there's been points increases in a few areas. The Fire Prisms had a points increase. The D-Cannon platforms have. So have the Night Spinners.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are...
Wait, can't forget the Scat Shark Wraith Knight.
Yeah, the Deep Striking Wraith Knight as well. But yeah, it does make the list a little bit more expensive, but actually across the board there are a huge swathe of units which are undercosted there. And you could argue that even the Fire Prism at 25 points more is still undercosted.
Still great. Yeah.
The Night Spinner, sure, it's probably at the correct points cost for the weapon profile, but then you look at the special rule on that thing, which is insane to stop people from advancing. I don't know why that one got so much better than everyone else.
Yeah. Very strong.
Yeah.
Yes, the Night Spinner, very good. I think we're going to talk later about some Eldari lists, so maybe that'll be a good time before we segue into why some of these changes are good. But I think what's notable about Eldari is that what I kind of feared also is that they were going to change the points of some things, and that would maybe just let people side grade to things that were just as powerful, almost, right? Like, where some of these things may have gone up 20%, you can side grade to units that were 10% worse than that original cost, right? So really the downgrade is not actually as large, right?
Yeah, there's not. It's only a marginal change well, the thing is, the big changes that the list design of running 3 Wraith Knights probably, it doesn't really exist. It's too expensive, and also you don't have the Fate Dice outlet to really make that work very well. So yeah, I mean, they've corrected that one extremely awful build. And now we're left with like a still extremely, extremely strong army afterwards.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we're lucky in a sense. At least I'm definitely lucky because I'm only focusing on teams. You've got a little bit of singles still in your eyes there. And in the teams environment, this isn't a problem. But I would feel that if I was focusing on singles here, this is a little bit of an issue still.
Yes, but let's chat about singles later, because I am actually, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit more singles focused than team focused, despite playing at WTC at the moment.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah. Let's get into that in a bit, because I've got a spicy singles list actually, which I think is good fun as well.
Oh yeah. Sure.
All right, the next faction. So this is in line with what Games Workshop said they were going to do, nerfing Indirect. And like I said in the previous episode, I believe it was the previous episode, if they do this to Guard, then I think the faction is going to be extremely bad. So what's happened is they've put up all the prices of the Indirect. So Basilisk up 25, Death Strike up 25. Like, I mean, who was even playing that anyway? I mean, it's AP1 and doesn't ignore cover. Like, who is playing that? Sorry, this is.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't get it.
there's some brutal points changes in a few places, but I mean, you can't disagree that the Indirect was a little bit too cheap for Guard.
Yes, yes.
I'm not saying the
100%
faction's
agree.
good after that, but
Yeah, I 100% agree. So just to carry on, Field Ordnance Battery up 20, Manticore 20, Colossus 30, Earthshaker Carriage 10, which kind of got off a little bit lighter, Medusa Carriage 15, Praetor is 50. Okay, I don't know who's played that
I don't
either.
know who
But
that is. Yeah,
the larger issue here is that they've just sucked away the only game plan that they have themselves actually designed into the faction.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit bizarre because I think that Guard actually got nerfed a little bit more than Eldar on the points. Simply because you've actually got no real direction to side grade into, do you?
yeah. I think Guard were almost struggling before anyway,
Yeah,
with a very
yeah, they were. Yeah,
with a very awful kind of play style as well.
yeah,
And this isn't going to help, but you know, I think there are some Guard builds that you can play at a more kind of average level.
yep, yeah.
But
Maybe you're playing some Rogue Dawns or something like that as well.
yeah, you
Or,
got your tank
you know,
commanders in there and things like that, you know.
yeah,
Um,
not for 240 points, Vic, but I get
they're
what you're saying.
really expensive. Yeah.
I couldn't help it.
You know, it's interesting that you said this, and the sisters also got affected by this because the Exorcist is probably running 3 Exorcists in a sisters army is like one of the key things
Yep.
because it's everything else is a bit questionable.
Yep.
And the Exorcists are actually a good point of output, and they going up 30 points each is just brutal for sisters.
Brutal. So they got the relative. I mean, they got the same treatment, didn't they? You know, their best unit, whilst the rest of their faction being pretty mediocre. You know, just copped a change that the rest of the game was just implementing anyway, right?
Do you want to know a funny one? It's exactly the same thing happened to Grey Knights here.
Oh.
Poor Grey Knights getting 25 points on the Purgation squad for kind of a situational indirect fire is just brutal.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to take a side note here. It's kind of it's like a good essay, but with grammatical errors. And I know I've used that analogy before. It's got the right intent, but it's kind of I guess it's what happens when you take a broad paintbrush across an entire balancing act, isn't it? Really, you go, well, Grey Knights, Purgation squads can do indirect fire, so they need to go up, of course, as well, because that's what the motto is this week. It's kind of like, guys, they win it.
I get how they've done it because they've gone like search indirect fire, increase the points. The thing is, the Purgation squads don't have the indirect keyword, but they still got caught in this. And then other units like Obliterators or even something in Thousand Suns, they've just kind of like escaped.
Yes, yeah, and Obliterators are fantastic as well. They're like the best unit in Chaos Space Marine, so it's kind of funny. Yeah, so there's been some I guess what is the word I'm looking for? There's been some like casualties, unintended casualties perhaps.
Yeah, caught in the crossfire.
Yes, but one of the big ones, Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights caught the nerf, which I think is going to be good and interesting when we go into the kind of top line early signal meta results later before with a huge caveat asterisk next to it. But some of the knights that were very strong, the Castellan up 70 points, the Tyrant up 70 points. Now, these were the big knights with 2 up base saves, which made them very powerful because you basically got covered permanently, of course. And the rest of a lot of the knights, a lot of the small, none of the small knights went up, I don't believe. It's just all of the big knights have had a minimum of 60 points on top of them. So I actually think this was a good change. I think they were genuinely, I think they were a little bit too cheap, and it makes the option of playing a large knight and smaller knights in combination with one another a little bit more interesting, right?
Yeah, I think this is a good change across the board. If you're not planning on changing towering, they're going to keep that as a core mechanic. They need to really add a premium to the stuff with towering, and I think they've done that correctly here. These are quite hefty points increases for the large knights.
Yep.
Now it's interesting that there's no points changes for the small knights. I think they're still very efficient.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly the army is a lot less oppressive without the big knights being efficient points
Yeah.
wise.
And speaking of the big boy, Chaos Space Marines did cop a nerf. Khorne Lord of Skulls up 60 points. Got him.
Wait, did you see, like, if you scroll down, the World Eaters one got 105 points? Oh, man.
Yeah, they're not having the best of runs so far, are they? Yeah. Okay. So perhaps we've still got some interns working on the balance team, but okay. I've
They
never.
split it half and half. There's two teams in this one.
I've never seen the Corn Little Skulls personally in real life. Well, I have actually, but it's been a very, very long time. So I'm not sure if that was a niche meta build that was dominating some local spheres.
Actually, one of the strongest builds.
Really, the triple
yeah.
Corn Lord of Skull.
Yeah, but not anymore.
Not anymore. Very terrain dependent though, the Corn Lord of Skulls, because
It's huge.
it is very big. Yes. But I remember playing against triple Corn Lord of Skulls and getting my face wrecked when I first started playing the game too.
Yeah, that's it. Big one here, Dave. The Desolation Marines.
Yes.
Yeah, go on. Hit us with that one.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Wow. Okay, so I was playing a lot of Desolation Marines. I was playing Death Watch, which I still think are very good. And I was having a blast. I talked multiple times on the podcast. Desolation Marines are too cheap. They actually got better, especially with the access to plunging fire in some terrain formats. And in addition to that, they got cheaper. So that was quite bizarre. And Games Workshop have supposedly listened, up 10 points per model, which I actually think is bang on the nose. I think 340 points for a squad of 10 is a big enough investment where you do get quite a bit of bang for your buck, right? You got Oath of Moments, Desolation Marines. That covers and shuts down a lot of armies. But what it means is that you do end up sacrificing quite a bit of that secondary play to play them. So if you were previously playing, I think the math is if you were previously playing 20, you now play 15. So, a 10 and a 5. Or you just play 1 10-man, right? So, yeah, I still think they're fantastic because a 10-man, especially in this meta as we'll get to, blast keyword being extremely pertinent, something that you definitely want to lean into. I still think they're very good. And, native ignore cover. If you're playing them in Death Watch, you can still teleport them. So that's really good as well. So, you know what? I think this is actually a good overall change because, it doesn't appear as if they were looking for direct rules changes outside of Fate Dice, right?
Yeah, and I think this probably brings Marines into a very fair and balanced kind of place.
Yeah, and it makes them diversify their game plans a little bit more as well, right? You can't just spam Desolation Marines, or you can't just start your list with 20 Desolation Marines and then build up from there, which is basically how it went.
I really like it. Other than that, there's a few other random changes here and there. Biovores, because Spore Mines are so good, it's just got a little points increase.
The Harpy, 60 points, get wrecked.
Oh,
don't know why that copped a nerf. It doesn't even have indirect fire.
Yeah, what? They do. It's actually kind of funny, isn't it?
I think maybe they just do some of them for memes, don't they? Like, I don't know. Would they?
I love that they added an option for Death Guard to now take 7-man Plague Marine units.
Yes,
that's for a bit of lore, bit of narrative.
Yeah. The Syruptic Heavy Construct, 70 points. The Morkanaut
guy,
45. The Talnar and the Storm Surge, both towering.
I don't even think the Morkanaut is the good towering thing for orcs, but whatever. They missed the other one. It's fine. Let's not talk about it and get that nerfed.
Yeah. So I guess that's the FAQ. Going through it, do you remember what your first impression? I guess you were on holiday at the time, right, when it dropped?
Yeah, no, but I was still engaged with it.
What were your first impressions? Were you like, oh, this is really big, or this is like going to shift things a lot, or were you sort of like, it's going to be the same?
Didn't know if it was going to be primarily points changes or if there was going to be more rules changes. I generally think the direction they went with everything is correct. Everything's moving in the correct direction. Yes. Like maybe they missed a few targets here and there. They kind of like did some random stuff, but the whole overall direction that the game is going in is better because of these points changes than it was before.
Yep.
So it's a very positive start, especially because it was done so quickly. What about you, Dave? What did you think?
Initially, I thought the 1 Fate dice was brutal. I was like, man, that is that's I thought that's death to Wraith Knights, and I think we're probably correct, right? The Wraith Knights it's maybe one-off. Is it still viable? We'll see. We'll talk about it later. But that's a really good change. I thought that change in and of itself, the 1 Fate dice per phase, was a bit too far actually. I would have liked to have seen more points changes across the board, whilst keeping that core mechanic, because the miracle dice mechanic I thought was quite good. It didn't, once per unit per phase felt, and I believe that was how miracle dice used to work, right? Once per unit per phase, roughly. That felt like it was in the right spot, but at the same time, you couldn't automatically make things sixes, so there was that. But what it meant is that you couldn't spam your saves on your Wraith Knight, which is obviously the big mechanic there, or you can't Overwatch and then wound and then do the damage roll as well at the same time, right? So you can't automatically hit, automatically wound, and then automatically 6+ mortals, which on Overwatch was just brutal because you could pick where you wanted to shoot it.
I was actually hoping that they would like build it up from the ground up, and
Also,
isn't just completely remove the mechanic and replace
oh
it with
yeah,
something new. But it would take a lot of effort through a lot of index cards.
that's true.
Or they could just completely follow, because it's very, very powerful mechanic. Even at one per phase, it's
Mm.
really strong, especially because you front load with 12 choices at the
Mm-hmm.
start. And then the Farseer modifies you. It's just incredibly powerful. So I would have loved it if they just scrapped it entirely and just came up with something different for Fate
Yeah.
Dice. There's no need for Eldar to have this, especially when they're an army that has access to dev wounds like this.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you think that?
mhm.
What was I going to say? Do you think that they could have kept it, but reduced the total number of fate dice you get at the start of the game?
I think you could have started on one and gained one per turn.
Yes, that would have
Uh,
been. And you maybe had to play guardians or something to.
exactly.
And,
Guardians. You
yeah.
play Eldrad to start off with 3 more,
Yeah, that's interesting.
something
Yeah.
like that. But
Or
it's
maybe there's something during the game where you can generate them through doing actions or something like that, where you can reliably get them. Or
yeah,
guardians maybe do an action where you can get them 100% guaranteed or
or
something.
just every
Yeah.
Farseer you have in your list just gains you one at the start of the game. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly right. Yeah.
something like that, just like really limited. But this is the direction we went with Harlequin's luck dice,
Mm.
where they started off with so many and they ended up now just like at the end of ninth edition, they were just getting 2 per turn,
Yeah, which
whereas
felt pretty balanced.
which felt pretty balanced, but it's very different when they were getting more than 5.
Yeah, yes, but we'll have to see. We'll, I think maybe now we've talked to the FAQ. Perhaps
Mm,
we go to a quick jazz break,
yeah.
and we will be back to discuss some early signs of the meta, what our interpretations are, and then after that we'll talk about the London Open, which my teammates and I are playing at this weekend.
Awesome.
See you then.
Okay, and we are back to talk a little bit about the current meta of the game. It's still developing around us, but there are a few little trends that we can see here.
Mm.
Um, I mean, we're working with decent levels of data, but still, all these tournaments are less than 100 people.
Yep.
They're not at super major level, but there's a bunch of GTs which have gone around the world.
Mhm.
And we've seen a couple of trends. I mean, I think you could almost predict coming out of this that the strongest armies in the game are.
Mm.
And did you predict kind of how the win rates would be, Dave? What?
No, I don't think so. I think we just generally our top four from the last tier list episode was Eldari, Genestealer Cult, Eldari, Genestealer Cult, Space Marines, T Suns, and Necrons as the top five in that kind of order.
Space Marines and Necron. Okay, all right, interesting.
So we
Yeah,
were sort of there.
the thing is, from a singles perspective, I think two of those factions are significantly stronger than the others.
Yes. Yeah.
And that tends to skew things a little bit in singles because people
Hmm.
who do that have such an advantage over everyone else.
Hmm.
And those two factions are Eldari and GSC,
Yep.
and both of them are sitting up around the 70% win rate
Mm.
from this weekend, which
Which
is
is
quite high.
kind of what we expected. I think one thing that's interesting. So I guess to go through some of the higher instances, and guys, just a caveat, this is extremely early data. Like we're talking about tournaments that have 30, 40 players, for example, right? So, with all due respect, if you're a fantastic player, you could probably rock up with Space Marines and win this tournament, right? Like there is, there are probably quite local skill differences in these tournaments as well. The largest tournament here was in Canada, which a name I'm not going to try and bastardize, with 86 players in 6 rounds. What I did think was quite funny is the Salt City GT. I think Joe from War Games Live was streaming that actually.
Oh, sweet.
74 players. First place, Imperial Knights. Second place, Eldari. Third place, Eldari. Fourth place, Eldari. Fifth place, Eldari. So the total number of towering units in all those lists, 15. So I don't really know what happened in that one, but I can suspect that towering is probably a pertinent thing there. But what the point I was going to make is that some of the kind of big themes are emerging in that the player base, which surprised me actually, the player base is quite Eldari focused, which I don't know if that was what I expected. I thought there would have been a smaller number of Eldari players. However, I think that they would have done extremely well. But the stats here say that Eldari had 57 players, making up 13% of the player base, which is that the highest it's ever been? Maybe.
Yeah, this is what happens now with modern competitive Warhammer, which is you see, you get moments where some armies will be very strong. You can take the Thousand Sons and Flamers,
Yep.
but the play rate kind of increases a little bit and then drops back down because actually it's quite complex to play. With Eldari, as they are at the moment, I think they are a very easy army to play well, and they're very, very forgiving. Positional mistakes are very easily corrected in your opponent's turn after you see where they are, and that's much easier to do than having to predict what's going to happen and set up for your next turn.
Yes.
So I think Eldar will get a lot of people going towards it simply just because, oh, look, it works. In my hands, it's just working as soon as I try it. And I think that player base is only going to increase with a little bit of time until there's the next change.
Interesting. One thing that I didn't think was going to happen is actually, well, I thought this was going to be even more popular than this, but Imperial Knights with 41 players. I thought that there was going to be actually a lot more because I thought people were going to come out with their 3 big knights, and I just figured a lot of people either have access to friends who have got 3 big knights or 12 armigers plus something else. So they had 41 players, which is the third highest represented faction.
Still very popular.
It's a lot, isn't it? Yeah,
it's a lot. Yeah.
Custodes, the second most popular faction, and I think this is definitely to be expected. Custodes, when they were very strong last year, also was it last year? I think it was last year. No, year before last. Sorry, when they were very strong with the turn-off rerolls and everything, combining, they were like 20-something% of the player base. I went to a tournament and played 4 Custodes players and then played one again in the finals. It was extremely popular, and that's because it's a pretty low model count. Very easy to get the models. Very easy to prepare as well. Just spray them gold and highlight some parts red as well. So not really surprising there. But did you want to jump in?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just find it really interesting that these factions like Custodes, Necrons, Thousand Sons all sit pretty bang on around the 50% win rate.
Yes.
And I find that really interesting because the Custodes, you would think that they're a relatively easy army to play. You just kind of go forward.
Yes.
But what you can see is that Custodes, Necrons, and Thousand Sons are all very powerful armies. But there's a big player skill component involved in getting success out of them. And you see that immediately. Things like Imperial Knights and Eldari are just like really easy to play. And GSC, I think the level of player skill required to play GSC and have success to the kind of 4-1 level is actually not high at all. It's
I 100% agree. I was
nowhere near as high as it used to be.
I was wondering where you're going to go with that because I was just about to blast you and be like, "This is not difficult." I 100% agree.
You have so much freedom to just deep strike within 3 inches over and over and over again, and the output profile is excellent into a wide range of targets.
The output profile of demolition charges are good into literally everything. That squad has just come in 3, point and delete. It is extremely strong, and we'll go into what I'm playing this weekend. And I'm playing the tankiest faction in the game, and you can still get deleted by one squad. Brutal. And you're right, like the game plan is super similar every game for GSC. It's turn 2, boom, drop everything. If your opponent doesn't play flawlessly or have a list ticked against them, turn 2, come in, boom, drop everything, and try and tabble your opponent, or do crippling amounts of damage. And then you have OC2 on your 20-man blobs, which is actually super competitive. Like OC2 on blobs that come back with 20 squads that you can just charge in and not care about is like probably the best primary denial plan in the whole game right now, I think.
Yeah,
Mm.
and
Sorry,
turn
mini
turn.
rant.
I mean, it's so simple, isn't it? Turn 2, drop. Turn 3, drop the other half. Turn 4,
Yep,
drop the stuff from turn 2 back in,
yep.
and just rinse and repeat until
The
the end
the,
of the game.
the Saboteur is like the most broken 50-point character I've ever seen. It's like lone operative, does grenade strat for free, mortals you if you move within 12, has like a demolition charge that hits on 2. Like,
Yeah, yeah, he's
what more do you want for
brutal.
15 points? It infiltrates or something as well. Isn't it?
I mean, just the output's too high. That's the thing.
Far too high. Yeah.
And you know, when GSC first dropped, when we were looking at it, it's like, it looked like we couldn't see all the weapon profiles. We were like, okay, this mechanic is so strong,
Yes.
and the rules are so strong. But if the units don't do much damage, it's going to be a very interesting technical army to play. The
Yes.
mistake they've made is that the units do a lot of damage,
Yes.
which is incorrect game design here, and
Yeah.
it's hence we get the 71% win rate.
Yes, 71% win rate. Yeah, winning four out of the 10 tournaments. 50% of their players went X and 1 or X and O. So that's interesting. But obviously, these are early stats as well.
Mhm.
I was going to make a point that you said that I thought was very interesting is that Custodes, Necrons, and Thousand Suns, which we all thought, Yoko and I thought were in the top, were three out of the kind of 3 out of the 5 topish factions, right? Or Space Marines, Necrons, and Thousand Suns, like 3 out of the 5 top factions that we picked. Sitting at 49, 51, and Space Marines at 42% win rate. I think what's happened here is that early on in the meta, a lot of players have gravitated, a lot of regular players that are practicing, have played 15 games going into the tournament, have just gravitated towards extremely powerful lists, right?
Mhm.
Like Imperial Knights, GSC, Eldari. And whilst Space Marines, Necrons, and Thousand Suns are still strong, very strong, in fact, I think that the players that have opted to play them haven't maybe been of that caliber that have played 10 games, 12 games before the tournament, if you know what I mean. Because that I genuinely don't think Necrons at 49% win rate reflects how strong they are right now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's the same with Thousand Suns, you could
Yeah.
argue. But
Well, Space Marines are surely not 42% win rate pre FAQ, right? Like that doesn't reflect the faction, I don't think.
I think, yeah, the Space Marine ones is a whole other debate, to be honest. I think the Necrons and Thousand Suns is a little bit clearer there. In terms of discussion point, I think the Marines one is going to be very complex over the next. It's a good one to touch back on,
Yes.
because I have a feeling that they may stick around this amount.
Interesting.
Um,
Wow. Okay.
yeah, but with the Thousand Suns, I think I'm quite interested that their win rate is like this, because they are a strong, like consistent army, and I think they are going to be strong in the mid tables. But I think it's a bit demanding on player skill.
Yes.
And the Necrons is a similar thing. Now, the Thousand Suns and Necrons are both armies that don't necessarily win by a lot.
Yes.
And I think
Exactly.
they have a chance, especially the Thousand Suns, to lose by a bit. So yeah, we'll see how that progresses, but I have a feeling they won't go much higher than this either.
Really fascinating. I mean, which bodes well if some of these factions get toned down a little bit. So yeah, some interesting meta developments. I don't think any of this is really shocking. What I would say is I saw some photos of some terrain from some tournaments, and this was particularly evident where towering was involved. And I believe some of these tournaments were, using the GW layout where they would have big piece of perspex, and then they'd have like 2 smallish ruins on it, and effectively what that means is that, well, there's a gap between the ruins, and like I can see you literally across the board with my towering knight. So that obviously doesn't bode well for player experience or for competitive gameplay, realistically, right?
Yeah.
And these tournaments were using GW layouts, so it's going to be interesting to see in the future how this is ruled if towering stays as is. And just like we talked about in the critique of 10th edition episode, this is a huge problem for tournament organizers in terrain, right?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. If it's a problem, I mean, I think they're moving in the right direction. It's only going to take one more tweak, and I think it realistically could be points at this stage.
Okay, interesting. I've got a. Oh, let me
yeah.
get the litmus test on this. How about
Okay.
this? Towering only works within 24 inches of the model.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can only get the effect of towering if your model you're targeting is within 24 inches of you, because it kind of like towers over. You can't like see into infinity
I like
distance.
that. Yeah, for
Could be
sure.
good, maybe. So
I mean, my change potentially would be that towering allows you to target enemy vehicles, but not infantry.
ooh, it's cool.
So because like, I can imagine someone just hiding behind a wall, and they can maybe see the knight, but the knight
Yeah,
can't see them.
Yep.
but you can't
I like
necessarily
that.
hide a rhino
Yeah.
from a towering
What
thing.
would be your? I think the GSC change is quite obvious. One of the changes is very obvious. It's that when you respawn, you have to be wholly within 9 inches of the blip that you respawn from. That's a huge part of what makes the army extremely busted as well. Is
Yeah.
that you string out 18 guys, 16 guys, only 4 of them have the seismic cannon anyway, so it's like, well, the other 16 guys are pretty redundant apart from 4 flamers. Shoot you with my seismic cannons again, charge you to try and make a 9, right? It's that ability. I think if they did that straight away, I think that would help tone down the faction a lot already. Actually,
I think that they just should not have included the 3-inch deep strike stratagem, and it should have been an enhancement.
ooh,
I think
yeah.
that I would have
So you
gone
have one big demo squad
one
or
and
rapid ingress.
and
Yeah,
sure, yeah, because just once, that's it.
yeah.
And then they've got to play everything else just normal. Just keeps. I mean, I love the stratagem to cycle your unit back into deep strike,
Hmm.
but for that to continuously come in at 3 inches is really tough.
Yes, Gene Stealer Cult also have the best character ability to make a stratagem free per turn, not per
Yeah.
battle round, which is obviously very powerful in that as well.
Yeah, and for some reason that lets them they can kind of use it in the sky and things.
Yes,
It's just which is nuts. So
but we all thought, well, Yoko and I thought in the tier list that they weren't going to hit GSC because it's for some reason they have a bit. I think GW have a bit of a blind spot when it comes to GSC. So hopefully,
maybe not anymore. I think.
hopefully they're listening and take a look at that faction. But I'm not going to claim that I'm not playing something good this weekend because I am. I'm playing something good, not a new love because I haven't fallen in love with them yet, but a new faction, a new painting hobby. I've been really enjoying it. I've been posting
Nice.
pictures on the team chat. That's right. This weekend I'm playing the old Tomb Warriors. I'm playing Necrons, and
Nice.
yeah, I played one game with these guys, and after that game, I thought there's a lot to this faction because I think one thing I don't know if you felt the same. Let me know if you felt the same way. But looking through all the indexes and stuff like that, particularly obviously Guard because that's what I was playing before this. I thought there's not a lot of depth. There's not a lot of options to take. Like there's not a lot of the meta's like this. I can tick into this, this, and this, right? Which I think is what I really love about 40k is like, the meta I'm expecting is like going to be this. So I'm going to tick into the last 300 points of my list like this, for example, right? I'm going to completely change my game plan to do this. Did you find that you could do that a little bit with the early indexes, or did you sort of feel like it was a bit autopilot buildy kind of initially?
I think it's a lot better now. I think there are multiple archetypes that you can tweak towards with, like you said, the last few hundred points of your list. And I think list building is actually pretty interesting at the moment. And
Really?
sounds
Wow.
like maybe you're not, but I think it's pretty interesting because, like, when I first opened up the index, it's like, oh, look how good the Indirect Fire is. People are just going to take loads of those. And then, oh, look how good Towering is. Everyone's just going to take loads of those. But now it's like, oh, but maybe I can, put a big unit in the middle. Maybe I can do a horde. There are a couple of armies which do that well. Maybe we still do some Towering and you can make that work, but then you tweak in your allies to try and balance the list for singles.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot of scope for it, and seeing it from the team's perspective side of things has made this bit really interesting for me. Actually, I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would from the experience at the start of 10th to now.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I think Teams does amplify that a lot. But back to my, I think Vix is probably right. Just a heads up. But back to my point, I looked at Necrons. I thought this is very deep. It struck me as one of the deeper indexes. Perhaps that's the point I should make. One of the deeper ones because it's got like 15 characters, and I was like, cool.
Nice.
Some of these do some jank that's going to be good, surely. So I played one game, and I thought, well, there's actually some really good elements here. It's a little bit different from what I'm playing. It's quite a low output style list, but it's got a clear game plan, and I think that's important in 10th edition at the moment, having a clear game plan. So let's crack on. Should I run you through the list?
Yeah, I'll be interested in this
the
one.
Spice. We'll see. Okay. Rightio. So, to kick it off, triple Hex Mark Destroyer. Straight up.
Nice.
3 of the bad boys. I think these guys are pretty much 3 auto-include. They're very, very good against Gene Stealer Cult, which is, arguably the best faction at the moment. I think Gene Stealer Cult, best faction at the moment, right? Better than Eldari. So these guys are fantastic because what happens is that they kind of want to drop everything in one turn. And what you can do is you can actually, it gets so good, but you can kind of have these guys. They have a special ability where if you shoot a friendly Necron unit within 3 inches of the Hexmark destroyer, then the Hexmark can then shoot. So what happens is in Necrons is that it's very difficult for your opponent to kill the bricks, what I call the bricks. And if you can interrupt their shooting sequences somehow, then and they don't end up killing your bricks, and then you get the chance to breathe again and revive them and reanimate them, and then you can really take the steam out of your opponent's sails or the wind out of their sails to then not be able to kill them again and again. So the Hexmarks are really good for that. They're also lone operative, precision, 6 shots, 6-1, and they deep strike, lone operative. So for 70 points, they're really good. They can also Overwatch for free once per battle round. And you can do it again, so you can Overwatch twice, but you probably don't. There's not really a lot of great Overwatch options in this list. However, yeah, really love them. They're a great tech. And actually, what you can do, this is very strong, is that you have one in Deep Strike, so you can threaten the GSC blips. And then what you can do is, on their turn, you can rapid ingress it into your army from Deep Strike at the end of their turn. Nice. So you can see where they move and put their big demolition blobs, and then you can put them down within 3 inches of the units that they're going to target with their demo bricks, and then you can guaranteed shoot as well. So that's some spicy tech.
That's right, tasty. Oh, I'm also noticing that rule that you mentioned that Hexmarks have sounds awfully familiar to Slime Arbor.
Oh, that's true.
They are surprise.
They're officially a better Slime Arbor than us.
And you got 3 of them.
Yeah. I got a lot of characters in this list. 2 Locust Heavy Destroyers. I've got 2 Gorse Destructors. Those are the big anti-tank vehicles. It's 14 minus 4, damage 6, flat 6. So, kind of a singles tournament there. You don't want to be call out. If you do play against Knights, which I thought was going to be reasonably popular. Having 2 of those is for 90 points is a nice little hedge there. Then, the 2 big bricks. 2 units of 10 Lich Guard, both with the Hyperphase Sword and the Dispersion Shield. So these guys are T5, 3 up save, 4 up invulnerable, which you're going to be on most of the time, -1 to wound, which is a really good profile because they're 2 wounds also as well.
Nice.
Then running with both of those, I've got 2 Technomancers. The Technomancers give you a character that moves 10 inches, which is good because your Lich Guard are pretty slow. And then so you can leapfrog them from the back over into the front if you want to get a charge. But more importantly, he gives you a 5 up Feel No Pain as well. So these Lich Guard have a 5 up Feel No Pain, along with a 4 up Invulnerable and 2 wounds apiece, which are good. Then with each of the Lich Guard, you take 2 Crypto Thralls, which have 2 wounds each, 4 up Invulnerable. No, they don't have a 4 up Invulnerable, sorry. They just have a 3 up base save, 2 wounds each, but a 4 up Feel No Pain as well. So they are amazing at soaking up, damage 2 shots, for example. They add a huge amount of tankiness because they're 4 up Feel No Pain. And they have, pretty decent shooting in combat as well. Then I've got 1 unit of 20 Necron Warriors. Now, I probably had a list error here, which I forgot to name the weapon. I forgot to swap my weapon over. So I'm running the 24-inch gun at 2 shots, 0 AP, which is arguably better against GSC maybe, or versus the 12-inch gun. So, not a massive difference there. But
doesn't matter, really.
Yeah, it's not hugely game-changing. Your Necron Warrior is not really there for your output. But running with the Necron Warriors, I've got the Orokin, the Diviner, and then I've got the Overlord as well. And the Overlord has the Hypermaterial Ablator. Mate, some of the names in here are sweet.
That's awesome.
So the Overlord lets you use a strat again for free. He's also got a pretty nice weapon, so he's good in combat. I've got 2 Crypto Thralls there as well. And the Hypermaterial Ablator makes you -1 to hit and count as cover if you're outside of 12 inches. So that's nice. But Orokin, the Diviner, has a once per game ability where he gets 3 times the attacks and strength, and any wounds are devastating wounds. So he's pretty good in combat once per game. Nice. But he more importantly gives you a 4 up invulnerable for all 20 warriors, which is a total pain in the ass to get through.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so over that, and I'm actually running 1 Locust Lord. So Locust Lord with the Veil of Darkness, and he goes with 6 Locust Destroyers. Now, this is actually the last addition I made to the list, because this is like my 4th brick, I think. And I think the 6 unit of Locust Destroyer is actually not bad. 3 shots, 5 -2 damage 2. And with the Locust Lord, they auto wound on 5s to hit, I think. Because they have lethal hits, I believe. And then you get critical hits on 5 ups. So nice. You auto wound on 5 pluses, I'm pretty sure. Which is good, because the UKTC boards, I don't really know how well designed they are, because the UKTC boards, the terrain format that we have here, what's kind of happened is that they've moved all of the terrain more towards the middle of the board, which has unfortunately made all of the outskirts of the board extremely open. So having a teleporting shooting unit, a large unit like that, is quite powerful. So that's what I thought I'd go with. I've got the Canoptic Command Barrage. He's good because he gives all of your stuff within 6 inches +1 OC. So it makes your warriors OC3, Lich Guard OC2, which is really good.
Yep.
And then Canoptic Reanimator, which is fantastic. 12-inch aura. Whenever you reanimate D3 extra wounds, which is massive because a lot of the units in my army have reanimation. Well, they have a stratagem to reanimate once you've received any wounds or lost any models once per phase. And then in your command phase and your opponent's command phase, you also trigger reanimation protocols. So you reanimate 2d3 wounds or D3 +3 plus D3 if you're a warrior on an objective, which is like 7 warriors just in your command phase, which is a lot. So he's amazing, just one of. And then I've got 3 units of 3 Canoptic Scarab Swarms. So that's the list, man.
Nice list, man. I think it's got a game plan. It looks good on paper.
Mm-hmm. It's funny story about this, Vic. I was I didn't buy the GW app. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write my list, and then I went to go building it in the stat check Excel spreadsheet thing, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to just double check, just put into the notepad, put into the calculator, just double check my points. And then I realized I was at 1930 points because at the bottom I had forgotten that I was using my old Deathwatch list, and it had 2 units of 5 exaction squads at the bottom. And then I realized I was like, man, I got 70 more points. My list was already pretty good. So.
Nice. Okay, so
points.
Yeah, I love it when stuff like that happens.
little Christmas gift there. So that was nice. Yeah, it's Necrons are really, really good. They're a lot better than their win rate suggests. Their units are extremely hard to kill, and if you can't kill them in like one phase, not even one turn, one phase, they can regenerate so many models, and then in addition to that, they can just tag the things that were going to kill them, and then you just blob around the board, do your tacticals, deny your primary, regenerate, and it's really good. It's super fun to play, and it's actually very technically difficult to play extremely well. Like found every game I've been like, oh man, I could have done this way better or that way better, and most of it's like positioning stuff, right? It's very hard to master, using all these units to the maximum extent where you take some units away from line of sight, then you regenerate them, you reanimate them, and then you take saves on hair, so et cetera, et cetera. Super fun.
Those are the best armies, aren't they? Where you can see yourself improving with each game.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. I bet I'm looking forward to seeing the finished product on your Necrons as well. A very cool kind of bone theme going on.
Yeah, doing the old the Tomb Warriors, which has been good fun. I don't think I'm going to get. Obviously, they're not going to get all 100% done, but I really enjoyed doing my guard as well. So after doing that Rogue Dawn, which I put a lot of effort into, I kind of had a little bit of interest in painting a little bit better. So I'd gone the extra mile with these ones. Hopefully, it'll be a little project going across, and I'll probably be playing them at the WTC singles. So hopefully, get lots of practice.
Oh, fantastic!
Try and play that one. Yeah.
Well, dude, you are attending the London Open, which is, it's not as big as it's been in the past, but it's got a lot of good players there. So this is a 45-person tournament?
Yes. 45 at the moment, I think, yeah.
45 of the tournament, and you've got a whole host of really good players there. Now, looking through the armies that are there, what did you think when you saw them? Was there any surprises? Were you feeling confident in it? What do you think?
One thing that was surprising, that I was the only Necron player, basically. So that was kind of surprising. But it had the normal predators, I guess you would say, right? So you had a lot of the guys from Dice Town, I think they are all perhaps playing Eldari.
Or GSC.
Just Neil Robinson is playing World Eaters, but Conrad Bartowitz is playing Eldari. Dan Whitaker is playing Eldari, and Clement is playing Eldari as well. So obviously Eldari is still coming in fashion. These guys were playing Eldari last season as well. Quote unquote. But one thing I thought was interesting is the Clement is playing a Wraith Knight. So 475 points. Still thinks it's worth it. The towering could be quite strong. What are your kind of thoughts on that?
Oh, it's a super cool list. He's got the Yinkan and the Wraith Knight in there.
Yeah.
As soon as you see Night Spinners and Dark Reapers in there, it's a clear tech for the mirror, just in case.
I see.
And I think he's very well set up for the mirror.
Yes.
Sometimes this can happen though, where you have teammates and all of you are on the same faction.
Mm.
and you end up teching for the mirror rather than for anything else. But
Yes. I guess
over,
the Incarn with Dark Reapers is quite potent in the mirror, isn't it? You can kill something, and the Incarn is currently worded where you can kill an enemy model, teleport to it, and then still charge afterwards, right?
oh, yep, exactly.
So,
And I mean, he's got 2 Night Spinners as well, so he's got 2 D cannons, so he's got a huge amount of indirect.
yeah.
And obviously the Wraith Knight is towering as well. So I think this is very good. This list, I'm a big fan.
Ooh, big fan. Thumbs up. Thumbs
Yeah,
up. We've
Clement's a
got
very good player as well. So
Yes, we've got two teammates as well. We've got Boris and Yokkel,
mhm.
and they are both bringing the stank, the best army in the game. I know because I've been playing against this like every night for the last time we get out. They're both playing this Gene Stealer cult, and this list is crazy good. It's got they're playing point for point, by the way.
Are they identical?
Yes, they're identical. Yokkel and Boris have been chatting like every night on Discord.
Love
Going through the list, optimizing everything. I've loved to have seen it. So I believe they're playing off the top of my head. I'm not going to go through everything because there's
No
a lot of
problem.
stuff going on here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, there's definitely not 180 neophytes, but give me 1 second. Okay, one acolyte hybrids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5.5. So I believe that's 55 acolyte hybrids with demo charges, of course, maximum. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 80 neophytes as well, and then the Achilles Ridge Runner in there. Now, notably, this is quite a bit different from what the Europeans have been playing as well, which I thought was quite strange actually, because Nassim Fuchain is playing Gene Steel Cult as well, but he's been playing the Aberrants, which have a kind of infiltrate, anti-infantry, pretty tanky as well, of course, kind of game plan, which is way different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think everything works.
Hmm.
The absolute carpet of units is there's pros and cons to it.
Mm-hmm.
So just having a lot of bodies means that you can really play the mission very aggressively on top of actually killing your opponent.
Yes.
And overall, I think potentially that might be the strongest game plan.
Mm.
Removing some of those infantry units, so like NAS has a lot less number of units,
Mm.
and instead taking other data sheets, adding in long range anti tank shooting, adding in significant melee output with an infiltrating unit.
Mm-hmm.
These are very interesting. Now, I'm not sure infiltrating aberrants are the best thing in the world in UKTC format.
Especially because the redeploy is before who goes first or second.
Yeah, exactly.
Very big.
So let's say that that's the way it's meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Where the redeploy is done before you know who goes first.
Mm-hmm.
Even then, there are other terrain formats where you can forward deploy safely. And I think that's
Yes.
very powerful at that point. UKTC is not one of them.
Yes. So yeah, that's interesting. Although UKTC does have like we talked about before, they've compressed all the terrain into the middle, so you've got a little bit more density in the mid board, so to speak. So maybe
Okay,
there are some
fair
nice
enough.
ruins to just put these aberrants in, and even if you put them there, you can't get shot anywhere, right?
Yeah, I mean, they express such a really good area of threat
Mm-hmm.
when you're having to deal with everything else as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, I'm sure Nassim is going to do well as well. 7 characters. That's a lot. Not as much as me though.
No.
I think I'm playing 4 or 5. I'm playing 9, I think.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah, so interesting. GSC, pretty popular as well. And
Yep.
then let's go through someone else. We're going to scroll down the list here. And who am I going to pick out? Is there anyone that you wanted to pick out? Oh, I've got an interesting one, actually.
What have we got? Have we got anyone? We've got Thousand Suns. Will Whitaker, Dan's
Yes.
brother.
So
What has he got in here? I like it. Okay, so he's gone no Terminators. He's gone for Magnus and a lot of Psychers in here. So lots of Cabal points. Kept it pretty light on the rubrics. Just 3 units. One of them is a big unit, which is the one which goes with Araman, probably.
Yep.
And 3 units of Zangor just to play the mission. And I love the Changeling as the allied unit. So
yes. Yeah, the Changeling's super good. I kind of like the Thousand Sun Sorcerer and the Terminator armor.
Yeah,
I
nice
feel
little
like you
tech
get
piece.
yeah, you get a little bit of value out of him.
Very,
One
very weird to put the Umbralific Crystal on him.
oh, I see.
I think that's the wrong place for the Umbralific Crystal to go,
Hmm.
especially because he's a unit that can deep strike, and you can
Yep.
always rapid ingress him to make sure you get the Cabal points on the turn you need it.
Ah, spicy.
But yeah, but he's got the crystal there, so he's potentially double bouncing with the Thousand Suns Terminator, like
Interesting.
deep striking him next turn, teleporting him, something like that.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, or deep striking him, doing something, and then maybe a turn later teleporting him or something.
Yeah, just hand out those reroll ones to hit.
Yeah,
That's nice.
Mutalith Vortex Beast in there, being a popular
Yeah,
one
it's
coming up too.
single one. Single one means he's using it just as a tech piece with Lord of Forbidden Lore.
Ah, what does this
Just
do? Lord of Forbidden Lore. Is this the
that just
use
lets you
another
do,
Cabal ritual? Is it?
yeah, just for
Yeah,
two rituals, doubling up
cool.
the rituals.
Double
Yeah,
Doombolt. No Araman, I don't. Oh no, Araman as well. Cool.
yeah.
And Magnus. I'll be happy to see Magnus on the table.
Interestingly, the one he's missing is he has no sorcerer. Oh, yeah, he has no sorcerers. Like the can't be targeted outside of 18 sorcerers,
Really?
which I'm a big fan of. I think their psychic attack is really strong as well.
That's quite surprising because don't they have like a sustained three thing or
Yeah,
something like that? Like
it's only
they,
only 12 inches, but yeah,
yeah, but you can't be targeted outside of 18. So
yeah.
yeah, that's interesting. I've been really impressed with that one as well. So it'll be interesting to see how Will does there as well. Will's a good player as well. Then let's go over to I wanted to look at Jack Tight's list because Jack is someone I've always got kind of looking into, see how
Oh
he's doing.
yeah,
He's
what's he
playing
got?
Space Marines, so we haven't really looked at Space Marines very much. He's got the old Classico, Gladius Task Force. Here we go. Chaplain on bike. My man, two chaplains on bikes. Whoa, oh, this is spice.
What is this?
Primus Liberian. Okay, interesting. Two impulsors. All right. Get behind that. Two bike squads. All right. One unit of 10 Desolation Marines. Cool. Hellblaster squads. Two Hellblaster squads. I guess they go in the impulsor. Nice. And then we've got an Inceptor squad, which a lot of people are liking the Inceptor squads, by the way, because
Yeah,
you can come within 3 of the Gene Stealer dip. So that's a bit of tech right there as well.
they're 115 points though, but yeah, they're
Oof.
good. They're
Yeah.
pricey as anything.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, an Infiltrator squad's 90. So if you run one Infiltrator squad, one Inceptor versus two Infiltrators, maybe that's the trade off there.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then a Repulsor. Repulsor for
yes.
the old Desolation
my
Marines, I guess.
gosh.
Fantastic. 2 units of Stern 5 Stern Guard and a Calidus Assassin. Interesting. Well, I'll be keen to see how Jack goes with this one.
It's awesome.
I'm liking the Hellblasters. That's on theme, isn't it? Got some bikers in there as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, well, come on, Jack. You got this. You got the whole thing. Oh, it's Haidar here as well.
Yes, I was going to go to that. So why don't you kick it off?
Haidar. So Haidar's playing Adeptus Custodes.
Hmm.
This is a faction that I really love in 10th edition.
This is a faction Hyder has played for a long time, actually.
He's gone for a very. I can we call this a Haidar list now?
Yes.
He's,
He played almost exactly this versus Anthony Vanella on the table next to me at LVO 2 years ago. So
wow. Well, he's gone one Blade Champion, two Shield Captains, and then he's got 4 units of 10 Custodian Guard. Those are 405-point units. My
I
word.
mean, that's not bad though, right? Like you get 40 dudes. That's
Yeah, that's true.
that's a lot, man.
It's just a question of whether 40 dudes in 4 units when they're
Can play that mission,
Custodes
right?
is better than 40 dudes in 8 units. you know?
Oh yes, I take your point. I think the reason you do this is because you want to use the -1 damage strat for free, so you can use it on 2 squads because the custodian guard can have the 2 CP -1 damage stratagem.
Yeah.
So that's potentially good. And I think custodians are pretty good right now. So I think it's really interesting to think about this list versus the triple warden brick, which obviously gets the once per game 4-up feel no pain as well. So is 40 dudes just better than 30 and then some other stuff? Time will tell.
Yeah, it's really interesting. The thing is, this doesn't look like a singles list. This looks like a teams list. So maybe that's what it is. Maybe he's
Yeah.
testing it.
I think Custodies are, yeah, you're right. Haido's a WTC Iceland player. And I think Custodies are good in singles as well.
They are, yeah.
maybe
But
that's
you
me.
you probably could like see little bits of tech. You saw that Calidus Assassin before, some
Yes.
exaction squads.
Yeah.
You'd see maybe a little bit more,
Ah.
and maybe another Blade Champion for a second unit advancing and charging.
Yeah, you're
Something
right.
like that.
Yeah, you
Whereas,
could have played 2 exaction squads, maybe cut 2 guys out just to get some more game plan.
whereas in teams, this kind of list does work. I sit on all the objectives. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
how good your army is. We're like getting a similar score.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, notably here, only one Blade Champion. So I believe Blade Champion is the one that lets you
Advance and
advance and
charge.
charge, right? So only one unit's going to do that. So
Yeah.
interesting. I think this list is quite good against mine, actually, funnily enough, because we just kind of smash each other up. So yeah, if he gets into comp, if he manages to connect his whole army into my Necrons, then I think I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So I'm going to do some move block shenanigans, hopefully.
Oh, good luck. Yeah, that's a
But
tough one, isn't it?
yeah, it will be. But Haida, it would be lovely to play Haida anyway. So yeah, that's the tournament, guys. It's a little bit smaller than what we'd usually gone for. And I was wondering, Vic,
Hmm.
because I've thought and I've pondered this for a while actually, because I've thought, is this a symptom of 10th edition, or is it a symptom of something else? Because the London Open is a historically, growing, but reasonably large. It was pushing the super major boundaries last year, I believe.
Hmm.
So what's this? Have you got any thoughts on this?
I mean, I was chatting with you about this before, and I had this prediction that I thought the 10th edition would see. I think super majors will still exist, they'll still be popular and all this, but I think we'll see a development in local or at least area wide GTs
Yeah,
as being something that people really enjoy going to more.
yeah,
I think the kind of proliferation of super majors in the UK made them extremely popular,
hmm,
and people kind of forgot about their local GTs.
yeah,
But I have a feeling, we're going to see a little bit of a shift back towards people being happy to go to 50 to 100 person tournaments
yeah.
rather than only attending the 200 plus tournaments.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think there's a couple of factors going on here. One is that I think 10th edition players aren't. I mean, it's difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, one thing I thought was very interesting as well is actually over the last weekend, and if you look at the meta factions, there's only small tournaments as well. These
Yep.
tournaments are not big. We had I don't know how many total players they had. So I think it was about 150 players or something like. No, it was way more than that. But it wasn't like these aren't big tournaments. Like the biggest tournament was 86 players, right? Salt City GT was 74 players, but I'm pretty sure historically that has been a big GT.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like one of the FLG events or something.
Right, and they had one, two. They had the top five were all X and one, which means that they were over rounded for the number of players, so
Hmm.
they could have had double that capacity, right?
Hmm.
So that's interesting. So maybe it is a symptom that people either aren't ready to go to tournaments, or maybe that 10th edition rollout wasn't so good. I don't know.
It could also be the game balance. People are still not fully happy to
Yeah.
get involved with game balance as it is at the moment.
Yep.
I think the real test is going to be when we have one of the super majors scheduled
Yes.
in the UK and seeing what the
Leeds.
level of attendance is for that.
Yeah, well, Leeds will be when WTC is, so that'll be an interesting one as well. So yeah, but I think
Yeah.
for the London Open as well, it's been a bit of poor timing perhaps because as my fiance rightfully pointed out, it's going to be when the school break is. So a
Hmm.
lot of people maybe have kids aren't going to take the weekend off to go play Warhammer because their kids are also going to be away from school. They're not going to come play.
Perfect.
So I feel like that probably had an impact as well. And then maybe just summer in London probably expensive to get a hotel. And then in addition to that, obviously it's going to be more expensive because of school holidays as well, right? A lot of people don't want to come into London to stay here as well. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, hopefully it's that, right? Hopefully it's not that 10th edition people aren't enjoying it. I know I've definitely had kind of mixed responses, but having said that, after the FAQs come down, I think people are more positive, right?
Yeah, I hope people are more positive with it, and
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the next. I think at the end of July we're going to have just a small errata,
yeah,
and then a little bit longer to go before we get another balance pass.
yes, yeah, yeah. That's it, and that's signing us off. Episode 30. It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah, man.
It's good
We'll
to be back.
keep doing this content for you guys, especially as we start to approach WTC.
Yeah.
Maybe the next one will be after Dave's gone to his first 10th edition tournament
Ooh. Yes.
this
Hopefully,
weekend.
Ignite. Gonna be coming home with that Necron win and be putting Necrons on the map.
Let's do it.
All right, let's do it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Episode 30, 40K Fireside. If you have gotten this far, then thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And hope you guys learned something. If there's maybe a topic you want us to cover or something, feel free to leave something down below. We do read the comments, and we'll try and, include that in maybe the next episode. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.